Asylum ruling leaves immigration policy in chaos. Schools protest cools amid hope of compromise. Miraculous escape for passengers in coach crash. And Blair strikes a chord with some budding musicians.
From ITN, the ITV Weekend News with Katie Derham.
Good evening. A hole was punched in the government's asylum policy today when a High Court judge ruled that the way it operated a fast-track reception centre was illegal. He said 4 Kurds who were locked up at Oakington in Cambridgeshire had been denied their human rights. They and thousands of others could now qualify for thousands of pounds of compensation each. The Home Secretary David Blunkett called the ruling deeply disturbing and said the government would appeal. Here's Tom Bradby.
The government found out today the cost of a locked gate. The High Court ruled asylum seekers should not be detained here at Oakington against their will. And lawyers for the 4 men who brought the test case said they believed all those held could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. The total bill possibly running well into the millions.
Asylum seekers are not criminals, yet they're routinely stigmatised by such imprisonment. Far too often, the Home Office decision-making is motivated by a desire to deter asylum applications and make conditions in this country as inhospitable as possible for those seeking safety.
The judgment was withheld pending an appeal in October, but if it stands, asylum seekers will in theory be able to come and go as they please. Today, mixed reaction from local residents.
I think it's rotten, absolutely. We get them wandering around our garden at night when they've got out. I don't want that.
There's always going to be strangers walking around the village, whatever, so an extra fee is not really going to make any difference, I don't think.
The spokesman for David Blunkett said the Home Secretary is deeply disturbed at the implications of the judgment for the effective operation of tough but fair immigration controls. Legal experts say the government will find a way round it.
If the government does want to detain asylum seekers, it will have to do it not for administrative reasons, but satisfy the courts that they're doing it for a good reason, which will involve more paperwork, more consideration, but the government will still be able to detain if it so wishes.
The 4 men's lawyers welcomed this judgment today as a landmark ruling, but they played down the question of compensation. Around 20,000 people could, they said, be entitled to between £5,000 and £10,000, but they said many of those who'd passed through Oakington were now dispersed around the country and therefore unlikely to claim. Tom Bradby, ITN, at the High Court in London.
More evidence of the continuing inflow of asylum seekers has been uncovered by ITV News. The scenes at Sangatte near the Eurotunnel terminal in France have become familiar, but our Home Affairs correspondent Shuli Ghosh's report is from the English side of the channel.
At the freight depot in Dollans Moor near Folkestone, 15 trains a night come in from all over Europe. They carry cargo and sometimes people who've hidden in the containers. Security staff use carbon dioxide or CO2 detectors to see if illegal immigrants have managed to clamber aboard. Over the past week, they've found dozens of men, women and children. Some have risked their lives by jumping on while the train's moving. This night would be no exception. At 11:30, a high CO2 reading is found. British Transport Police are called. And a young man is pulled out. It's thought he jumped on board at Milan. He has Italian food with him. He spent 3 days hidden among boxes. It's undoubtedly been a difficult journey. He looks tired, dirty and dishevelled, and he appears to be alone. Police search the container, but find no one else with him.
Why have you come to England? Why are you coming to England today?
He either doesn't understand or he doesn't want to talk. In fact, he's from Moldova in Eastern Europe. Because people from Moldova have no reason to claim political asylum, he'll most likely be held in a detention centre before being sent back to Italy. John Marshall is a security supervisor at the depot.
you can average up to 20 persons per night coming out of the trains.
And they're all inside?
No, some of them are riding actually on the outside of the wagons and not actually in the containers. They've had, I can imagine, quite a traumatic time coming through the tunnel and that. Some of them are really scared. They haven't had food and drink for quite some period of time, so yes, it's been quite a mess.
Do you get families coming through, young kids?
Yes, we have had babies 1 or 2 days old.
But many more immigrants simply disappear and never end up on official records. A wide slit is found in the back of another container. There were people in here, but they've long gone. Shuli Ghosh, ITN, Folkestone.
The asylum seekers determined to get into Britain. A sort of peace broke out in the Ardoyne area of Belfast today at the end of a week of sectarian confrontation. Catholic girls being taken through a Protestant enclave to and from the Holy Cross Primary School were met with silence, but nothing worse. Our Ireland correspondent Mark Webster reports.
For the last time this week, the Catholic girls walked to school along a street lined with police armoured cars. But in marked contrast to the violence earlier in the week, both sides maintained a dignified silence. It led some to hope the tensions had eased.
If it's a turning point, thanks be to God. If it's not, we're no worse off. We've walked up with dignity. These people have also treated us with dignity this morning, and to me that's not bad when you think of what was happening 48 hours ago.
New initiatives have been proposed to improve community relations here, but in the meantime, the dispute is still simmering.
We need to find a way that firms coming up this road can respect the people who live here, and that people in here can respect the firms that's coming up the road. So we need to actually find that, and we can only find that through dialogue.
The burial of Protestant teenager Thomas MacDonald saw more children in tears. Killed in the suspected sectarian incident, a woman has been charged with his murder. Over the weekend, there will be fresh attempts to find a negotiated settlement to what's been happening here all this week. The hope is that come Monday morning, this won't be the sight that greets both Catholic and Protestant children on their way to school. This evening, the relief of the children that their ordeal had ended was evident. The worry is that their happiness will only be temporary. Mark Webster, ITN, Belfast.
Britain's former spy chief, Stella Rimington, has launched a strong attack on the Official Secrets Act. In her first interview since leaving MI5, to be published tomorrow, she calls confidentiality rules imposed on spy staff unrealistic. Dame Stella has fought a bitter battle with defence chiefs to become the first former head spy to publish memoirs. More than 50 holidaymakers, many of them elderly, were injured today when their coach careered off the A64 near York after colliding with a broken-down lorry. An air ambulance and an RAF rescue helicopter were scrambled to get them to hospital, but only a handful were seriously hurt. Tim Wilcox has the full story.
Its front cab ripped wide open and several hundred yards into a field. Police are tonight thankful that none of the elderly passengers on board this coach were killed or gravely injured. Shortly before 11 o'clock this morning, it collided with a lorry which had broken down on the busy A64 close to York Racecourse. The ferocity of the impact sent the coach, with its driver and 49 passengers, hurtling across the central reservation into the oncoming carriageway, then off the road.
It's remarkable that given this time of year, with a situation where the coach has gone across the eastbound of the A64 and hasn't had an accident whilst going across that road. And it's come to rest on its wheels in the field, and for that we're thankful.
2 helicopters joined emergency services at the scene. One 16-year-old girl was airlifted to Leeds with head and back injuries. A total of 53 people were taken to hospitals in the area. The majority were elderly, returning home after a 5-day coach tour of the Scarborough area. Tonight, just 5 people remain in hospital, and none of their injuries are believed to be life-threatening. It could all have been so much worse, say police. Their incredibly lucky escape helped by the coach remaining upright. Tim Wilcox, ITN.
The world is waiting tonight to see if President Robert Mugabe will honour the deal struck between Britain and Zimbabwe to solve the country's land crisis. Britain and other Western countries have agreed to provide money to buy out white-owned farms if law is restored. So far, so-called war veterans who've seized land are refusing to leave. The funerals of the mother and 2 young sons who were bludgeoned to death by Carl Bluestone, her police constable husband, were held today. It was a poignant ceremony in the northeast of England, a long way from Kent, where they died. John Draper reports.
Jill Bluestone's body was brought back from Kent to Middlesbrough, where she was born and brought up. At Nunthorpe Methodist Church, her coffin was followed by those of her small children. 3-year-old Henry and Chandler, aged just 18 months. Members of her immediate family and their friends attended a private funeral service of thanksgiving for their lives. The vicar spoke of Henry as a lively child who loved storybooks and cars. Chandler was just beginning to talk and had got his first shoes. Their older brother and sister survived the assault by their father. PC Carl Bluestone had launched a frenzied attack on his wife and children, the oldest boy still having medical treatment. Bluestone then hanged himself on the garage door. Locals knew the couple had not been getting on, but no one expected anything as vicious as this. After the funeral, the bodies of Jill Bluestone and her children were taken to a private cremation service. Carl Bluestone's funeral will be held later. Today's funeral marks the final chapter in the short lives of these 2 children and of their mother. Inquests have been opened in Kent. When they resume, further light's expected to be thrown on exactly why Carl Bluestone turned with such savagery on his own family. John Draper, ITN, Nunthorpe in Middlesbrough.
Forest fires threatening hundreds of homes in Northern California appear to be gathering strength tonight, fanned by high winds. One fire, about 70 miles north of the state capital, Sacramento, has now blackened 4,000 acres of forest. Many houses have been destroyed, and officials have warned residents to evacuate ahead of the flames. Now tennis, and Venus and Serena Williams made history tonight by becoming the first sisters to qualify for a Grand Slam final for 120 years. Venus has booked her place in tomorrow's US Open final in the last hour, beating the second seed Jennifer Capriati 6-4, 6-2. Her victory was watched by her younger sister Serena, who'd earlier demolished the world number 1 Martina Hingis, also in straight sets. The Prime Minister, back from his holidays, did something today we've not seen him do in public before. He played the guitar, briefly, with a school band in Hartlepool. Mr Blair's taken it up again only recently, but said it was like riding a bike. Once you've been taught, you never forgot how to do it. So how good is he? Here's John Ray.
This is the band. His critics claim he's all too keen to strike a popular chord, and maybe they're right. When it came to performing, Tony Blair didn't need to be asked twice.
Yeah, go on.
Go on.
Go on.
The Prime Minister unplugged, and unkind souls might say he should have been. He admits he's no Eric Clapton.
I didn't play the guitar for absolutely ages, and then about a year ago, some friends of mine who sort of play around in the band, and I kept saying, you've got to get up and play. And so I wouldn't. Anyway, this year I decided, well, I'm going to pick it back up again. So the last year I've been playing again, you see.
A youthful Tony Blair harboured hopes of chart success with his college band Ugly Rumours. He did reach number 10, where the guitar goes hand in hand with his ministerial box. But he can't yet match former Tory chairman Michael Ancram.
Have you seen the old man?
Or Bill Clinton's sax appeal. But one guitarist says the PM can rock and roll.
For him to take up the guitar, strum it really quite well with his right hand, really nice strokes, and then with the left hand, obviously he's playing the chords very well. So the coordination is very good. So he can play the guitar.
Yet many music lovers will be relieved he isn't ready to give up the day job just yet. John Ray, ITN.
A reminder now of tonight's main headlines. The government is to appeal against the High Court ruling that the way it's been operating a fast-track reception centre for asylum seekers is illegal. There's hope of a solution in the standoff at a Belfast school after Catholic children were allowed to walk to classes in silence. And more than 50 coach passengers have been injured when their vehicle veered off a road in Yorkshire. That's it for now. Mark Austin will be here with the ITV Weekend News tomorrow, but from all the news team, have a very good night. Goodbye.
gas, electricity and telephone.
Hello, good evening. Well, there's a lot of damp, wet weather around at the moment, but a dramatic difference in store for the weekend, with things turning cooler, brighter, sprinkling of showers around, and a noticeable wind. In fact, a distinctly autumnal feel to things. So straight away tonight, let's pick up on that rain, more or less slicing across the centre of the country there. And then during the course of the night, well, that sinks southwards all the while, ending up into this sort of position by around about daybreak. Behind that, we've clearer skies tucking in behind, and tumbling temperatures with that. In fact, down as low as 4 degrees in some of those Scottish glens there. So into tomorrow morning, and let's pick up on the rain once again, roughly speaking into the same sort of position there. We manage at least some sunshine over Scotland, but showers more or less from the word go, especially so for the far north and the northeast as well. Now, during the course of the day, during the morning, we see that rain sinking southwards all the while, drier, brighter conditions tucking in behind there. But at the same time, as far as these showers are concerned there over the Scottish mountains, well, these turn fairly wintry in nature. Now, temperature-wise, on the face of it, things look perfectly acceptable. 16 in Belfast there, the same for Newcastle, around 18 in London. Add on the rather vicious northerly wind that's blowing around, and it'll feel very cold indeed. Round about 3 in Shetland, 8 in Llandudno, and managing 12 in the Channel Islands. So taking a look ahead at Sunday's weather, and we've still got some rain on North Sea-facing coasts. The very best of the sunshine for southern as well as westerly parts, and that wind still refusing to give up. Well, that's the way we expect the weather to work out. Check it out, if you like, on our website. That's all from me.
Powergen. Gas, electricity and telephone.
On the ITV channels, you can see all the British Champions League teams exclusively live. Tuesday, Liverpool live on the ITV Sport channel and Arsenal live on ITV Sport Plus, with highlights later on ITV1. Wednesday, Celtic live on the ITV Sport channel and Manchester United live on ITV1. Tune in to ITV1 as usual or subscribe to the ITV Sport channel by calling one of these numbers now or contact your local pay TV supplier.
Coming up next tonight, the late headlines from your local Central News team.
Good evening and welcome to Central News. A single mum who's been denied NHS funding for treatment which could save her eyesight is set to receive the crucial help she needs. Yesterday we featured the story of Danuta Jeeves, who was terrified she wouldn't be able to look after her 2 sons if she became blind. But now a generous Central News viewer has stepped in to help.
The single mum from Whetstone, Leicestershire, is overwhelmed by the kindness of the anonymous benefactor who has agreed to pay for the specialist treatment she urgently needs to stop her going blind. And it's more urgent than ever. Yesterday she had an eye examination at Leicester Royal Infirmary that confirmed her eyesight has deteriorated considerably since she was diagnosed with a serious eye disease just 3 weeks ago. Leicestershire Health Authority are refusing to fund new drug and laser therapy for Mrs. Jeeves, even though 15 others are already getting treatment as part of a clinical trial. Mrs. Jeeves, who looks after her 2 sons, Ellis and Nick, wants to know how the Health Authority came up with the 15 figure.
It's a lottery, and just because of where you live or who decides on the funding, it just affects people's health, and you just can't play with people's lives like that.
Mrs. Jeeves wants to thank her anonymous backer, but says she must speak out for other people who might not be as fortunate as her. Eric McInnes, Central News.
A man's appeared in court charged with murdering and raping a schoolgirl more than 20 years ago. 14-year-old Marion Crofts was attacked and beaten to death in 1981. She'd been cycling home along a canal towpath in Aldershot. Hampshire police arrested 44-year-old Tony Yasinski from Kegworth Avenue in Leicester on Monday. Today he was remanded in custody until September the 14th by Aldershot magistrates. A court heard how a drinks company at Stamford in Lincolnshire avoided VAT and duty by claiming the beer and wine it had bought was from local cash and carry stores. Instead, the firm had used trucks to bring it in from Italy and then sold it on to restaurants. Today, director Jane DeMeo, seen here in the blue jacket, was given an 18-month suspended jail sentence after being convicted of evading more than £400,000 of duty and VAT. Northampton Crown Court was told her husband Domenico orchestrated the operation. He's fled to Sicily and is fighting attempts to extradite him. An inmate who's back behind bars after going on the run from prison has had 20 days added to his sentence. 71-year-old Fred Charles escaped from Leicester Jail last month while on gardening duty. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison after being found guilty of smuggling Chinese immigrants into the country last March. His family says he ran away because he was afraid to give evidence in another people smuggling trial. A portrait artist who stopped painting for 16 years has been inspired to pick up her brush again by Manchester United and England star David Beckham and his young son Brooklyn.
Portrait artist Edna Ricks at work on one of her latest commissions. After a lifetime as a professional painter, she stopped suddenly and dramatically back in 1985 after family business problems. That was until earlier this year when a single photograph of Brooklyn Beckham in a Sunday newspaper inspired her to get back to the easel, resulting in this painting of the budding young footballer. A watercolour of young Brooklyn and his dad David quickly followed.
I could see in this picture here the affection that he has for his son. And I can well imagine to be such a very important person that he is. He's got to have his home life and things to keep his sanity, in other words.
Mrs. Ricks from Mapley Park in Nottingham has done many commissions over the years for a variety of customers. Portraits of the great and the good, like Sir Winston Churchill and Lord Mountbatten, are among her subjects. Her most recent work is of Manchester United manager Sir Alex Ferguson. Now she's hoping to present her recent collection of portraits to the club. Rob Tomlinson, Central News.
And that's it for now. We're back with our next bulletin tomorrow lunchtime. Until then, from all of us here on the Late Team, have a very good night.
Central Weather, sponsored by Stay Bright Windows and Conservatories. The clear choice in any weather.
Hello again. Well, this weekend will be bright and cool, and that should persist through until next Wednesday, although the end of next week could get a mite milder again, although somewhat wetter. Much rain and wind around tonight, but that will at least help to hold temperatures up around 11 or 12 Celsius. Tomorrow morning that should pull away to the south, so a mix of patchy cloud and sunshine till lunchtime. Still quite chilly though, with little changing through the day. 17 is slightly down on today's values, and it'll feel colder than that in the northwesterly wind. Very sunny evening due though, but those clear skies mean a sharp drop in temperatures overnight. And Sunday will see a cool start, cloud and sunny spells with unbroken sun later, temperatures struggling to 16, that's 61. Not much better further afield for Saturday either. Much of a muchness across the country, with rain for the northwest of Scotland all weekend. That's it. Bye-bye.
The Central 10-day weather line, 09063 66 60 66.